All right, today we are diving deep into the First Crusade. But forget what you think you know about kings and conquest for a minute. We're going to look at something way more fundamental, how a massive crisis of faith and, let's be honest, a really clever political play managed to turn a whole continent of violent, brawling knights into, well, a unified army for God.
So, to really get a handle on the First Crusade, you've got to picture the world it was born into. We're talking 11th century Europe, and it's this weird mix of, on one hand, this incredibly deep, rock-solid faith, and on the other, just shocking violence. I mean, life was brutal and short. Salvation was the only thing that mattered. And this quote right here, wow, it shows you that brutality wasn't some rare event. It was just Tuesday.
So that's the big question, right? How on earth did the church take all that chaos, all that violence, and somehow funnel it into a holy war? That's the puzzle we're going to piece together today, and we're going to stick just to the religious side of things, this crisis of faith and the, well, divine solution that got the whole crusade ball rolling.
All right, let's get into it. To really understand why the Crusade happened, you've got to know about two huge problems that were basically ripping 11th century Christendom apart from the inside out.
Okay, problem number one, there was just too much violence. Think about it. The whole Viking era was pretty much over. So you had this entire class of warriors, knights, who were armed to the teeth with nothing to do. And on top of that, you have this system called primogeniture taking hold, which basically means only the firstborn son gets the family land. So what happens to all the younger sons? You get thousands of them with no land, no future, but they do know how to use a sword. Europe was a literal powder keg of angry, unemployed knights just looking for a fight.
Now, the church saw this, and they were desperate to put a lid on it. They came up with these movements like the Peace and Truce of God, which tried to ban fighting on, Sundays and holy days and protect people who weren't soldiers. But honestly, it was like trying to stop a flood with a bucket. The violence was just too deep. It was part of the very fabric of society.
Okay, so that's problem one. Now for the second huge issue. And this one was a full-blown crisis of authority happening at the very top of the Christian world.
You see, the papacy was in this massive, decades-long stare-down with the most powerful guy in Europe, the Holy Roman Emperor. The whole fight, which we call the investiture contest, boiled down to one huge question. Who's the real boss? Who gets to appoint powerful church officials like bishops? Is it the Pope, the head of the church, or is it the Emperor, the head of the state? It was a massive deal.
And this timeline here, it really shows you just how wild things got. I mean, look at this. In 1077, you have the Pope, Gregory VII, making the emperor stand in the snow and beg for forgiveness. Total power move. But then, fast forward just a few years, and that same emperor marches his army into Rome, kicks the Pope out, and puts his own guy on the throne, an anti-Pope. The papacy's claim to be in charge of anything was frankly hanging by a thread.
And check out this quote from the Pope. This shows you exactly what he was aiming for. He's saying he can fire emperors, that his word is final. It's an incredible claim of absolute power. But with an anti-pope sitting in Rome, backed by an army, those words started to sound pretty empty, right? The Pope desperately needed some way, any way, to show everyone that he was the true leader of the Christian world.
Okay, so let's recap. You've got two giant problems. On one side, you have a society just simmering with violent knights who need something to do, like a spiritual pressure cooker about to blow. And on the other, you have a pope who is desperate to prove that he and only he has the power to control that pressure. The stage was perfectly set for a radical new idea, one that could solve both problems at the same time.
And then, in March 1095, opportunity came knocking. Some messengers show up from the Byzantine emperor. They're asking Pope Urban II for help, specifically for some mercenary knights to fight off the Seljuk Turks. Now for Pope Urban, this wasn't just a simple request for help. Oh no, he saw a once-in-a-lifetime chance to change everything.
To get what Urban does next, we need to talk about something called penance. For a medieval knight, this was a huge deal. Your entire life is built around violence, which is a sin. So how do you get into heaven? It's a real problem. The belief was you had to actively make up for your sins with acts of faith. And the biggest, most difficult act of all? A pilgrimage. A long and dangerous journey all the way to Jerusalem.
And this is Pope Urban's masterstroke. It's absolute genius. He takes two completely separate ideas, the violent life of a warrior and the holy journey of a pilgrim, and he smashes them together. He basically says, hey, all you knights fighting to take back the Holy Land, That is your penance. I mean, think about that. For the first time ever, a knight could get to heaven not by stopping his violent ways, but by using them for God. It was a total game changer, a spiritual revolution.
So, with this bombshell of an idea in his back pocket, Pope Urban travels to a place called Clermont in France. It's November 1095, and there he gives a speech, a sermon that is about to set the entire world on fire.
The reaction was absolutely staggering. Something like 100,000 people answering the call. And you got to understand, that's not just knights. It's nobles, commoners, everybody. To put that number in perspective, this was probably the biggest army Europe had seen in centuries. This wasn't a recruitment campaign, it was a spiritual tidal wave, and it showed just how much power the Pope's words now had. And we don't even have to guess why they went. We have the receipts. Look at this document from Raymond of Toulouse. He was one of the big shots of the Crusade. He writes it down clear as day. He's going, "For the redemption of my crimes." This tells you everything. For so many of these guys, it wasn't just about glory or getting rich. It was about wiping the slate clean, about saving their own souls.
So, what's the big takeaway here? This powerful mix of faith and fighting was, without a doubt, an incredible motivator. It caught an entire continent on the move. But its legacy, the results of all this, well, that's where things get complicated.
I mean, look at the strengths. This religious idea worked. It took all that internal violence and pointed it outwards. It gave the warrior class a path to heaven. And when the Crusades actually succeeded, it was a massive win for the Pope. It proved he was the true leader of Christendom. But there were huge limitations. The religious passion it unleashed, it was like a wildfire the church couldn't always control. And it didn't just magically erase greed or ambition. And in the end, the Pope couldn't really control what the Crusaders did once they were thousands of miles away.
So I'll leave you with this question to chew on. The religious motivation for the First Crusade was absolutely real. Thousands of people genuinely believed in what they were doing, but it was also a brilliant political fix for the Pope's biggest problems. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? Was this a great moment for faith, or was it the moment faith became the ultimate weapon of power?